Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We are here in Northlands National Park, our second Planet Zoo franchise playthrough, and we have a little bit to talk about before we get into today's speed build. Now, the speed build today, I'm going to start by saying we're not doing any habitat or exhibit development. This is actually going to be a decorative piece. If you happen to catch my Cozy Cabins mini-sode a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so, I built some nice little log cabins that were going to be part of this national park. I'm just going to show you currently what we're going on. Reindeer habitat looking great at the moment. Everything's looking cool. I did make a few adjustments up on the guest area where I changed a few guest barriers around so that guests no longer clip through the walls, and it's actually working now. I just sunk some of the rope barriers into a wall and the guests no longer go there. They do spin around a little bit in confusion and then find another path, but it stops them clipping through walls, which is one of the things I hate most. I don't mind guests bumping into each other when they're trying to go one way or another and like doing that weird crazy dance to get around each other. I do that a few times when I'm walking down the street and I don't know whether someone's going to go left or right, and I do exactly the same. There's the weird which way am I going, which way are you going dance. That's fine, but I hate them clipping through walls. So we have solved that issue, and it's probably something I'm going to keep doing in future. Hopefully it won't cause too much confusion in the long run if I have a few of them stacked up, because I like to make sure that my guests are pathing correctly. So back to the cabins. I'm going to build a campground. You will see we're zooming out now. I've put in a railway. This is going to be a funicular railway. Now, it's obviously not a funicular railway. If you want to learn more about that, I'll talk about that in the episode where I actually flesh this out and build the stations. I'm just renaming things because I want to try and keep up on top of that as I go and make these new buildings, make sure everything's got its correct name so that if I have an issue, I know where to find it and I know what I need to change and adjust in terms of work zones, or adding an extra building into somewhere, or modifying the amount of staff that I have assigned to a particular work zone. As you can see, zooming out, we now have a nature trail going up the side of the mountain, as well as our railway. That is a quicker route. Over here is our focus for today's episode. We have two like little tiered hills here, and I'm going to build a campground there. We're going to put 5 of our lovely little log cabins in. One of the things that I do need to mention is at some point you will see me take a loan out in this episode, because these cabins are quite expensive. I did not expect them to be this expensive, and probably should have checked that before I decided to do this episode. But I don't see no reason why we can't spend an episode doing something nice and decorative, as if this were a sandbox zoo but in franchise mode. One of the things that I really like about franchise mode is it teaches you to manage the kind of finances of a zoo. Obviously we're playing on hard mode, so that difficulty is sufficiently increased for us, but I just wanted to make sure that I was putting in all of the decorative effort that I would be doing if I had unlimited budget to spend. Obviously it means the growth of the zoo itself is going to be a little bit slower, but I think that that's part and parcel of everything. In terms of this game, we move into new areas, we build these decorative pieces, and then carry on with a new habitat to bring in a bit more money. There is a new habitat coming. It's probably going to be a couple of episodes away, because for now I'm developing these guest areas. So over the next few episodes we're going to be doing this campground, then we'll develop our main entrance monorail station, then we'll move up into the hilltop area and develop that train station and build a new staff area. We'll also then start laying the foundations for our new habitat. I'm not going to tell you what it's going to be, but there will be a clue later on. Well, no, it won't be a clue in this episode. There'll be a clue in a later episode, and it's not really a clue, it's more very much on the nose if you happen to catch it. So over here we did make a few adjustments to the cabins, as you saw earlier on there. I then put in a dirt trail going up to where I'm probably going to have my stairs, and the idea here is we're going to put some paths in. We are going to path into the main entrance, but then this second level is going to be separated, so guests aren't going to be able to get up there. They will be able to access this main part where these first 2 cabins are, but the top 3 they're not going to get to. I am still putting path in there though, because I want to be able to put some benches on the edges of the paths. We're putting a staircase in here, and I had thought about putting a nice railing on there, but actually when I finally finished off the rock work, I thought it looked quite nice just being quite bare. Although I might end up getting a few lawsuits if people happen to slip on the wet snow and fall down those stairs and break their hips or something, but we can cope with that. I better get some good lawyers on site. Other than that, really, what I just want to do here is make a nice cozy retreat that's away from the hustle and bustle of the main areas of the zoo. And like I mentioned in an earlier episode, I want this to be a running theme throughout, where we have these interconnected habitats by various types of transport and other means and methods, but keep those hiking trails and stuff in if people want to spend a long time there. But at various points have these little cabin grounds, these campsites and things like that, so that people have a place to rest. And it's just interconnecting portions of this one large map. The terrain is a little bit messy. Obviously we randomized this one to a height map that's set by the game, so they generated it for us, and we are trying to work in as much as possible without needing to do too much terraforming, because what we've been given is something that I'd quite like to just be able to cope with, if that makes a lot of sense. Other than that, we're putting in our rock work now. The next step is going to be to put in some foliage, and I wanted to design like a little pagoda type thing for guests to come and relax at the end of a day, with a nice view looking back over the zoo and up to the hiking trail. So I'll talk about building that when I come to building it. Moving forward with this zoo, obviously we want to do our railway, and then the plan is to have that area at the top of the hill as kind of the main area of the zoo itself. So that's going to be a large selection of habitats and stuff like that. I've taken on board some of the suggestions people have given me in comments. They're going to be coming, and we're going to have a few new habitats based on what you've suggested. The one issue that I have had is exhibit animals. Now, there aren't a lot of North America, well, there aren't a lot of tundra and taiga animals that are available to us in terms of exhibits, and I love that the devs are continuing to work on the game and giving us new DLCs and stuff, but it would be nice to have a few more exhibit animals that were more concentrated on those biomes. Now, I know that can be difficult because I don't think there are a lot of small exhibit animals that you would find in those areas, but it would be nice to have some anyway. So I've tried to stick mainly with stuff from the Americas, which is where this zoo is based. So like the American bullfrog we had in, the forest scorpion, I can't remember where that's from, the snail, again I'm not quite sure, but the next round of exhibit animals are all going to be based from like places like South America, North America, and that sort of region. And it would just mean that we have a little bit of a job on our hands to control their climate, because they're nowhere near where they would normally be. Just finishing off this rock work now, and one of the things I have really enjoyed about making this is it's again pushed the boundaries of what I do creatively. I've not done a lot of rock work in general, so it's been really nice to play around with those tools and match things up, get that all nice and placed and make it look nice and natural. Putting in our path now, I wanted to run these paths so that they cut into the cabins themselves. I did try stepping up there because I thought it would just save me some time and I could put a guest barrier in there, but it didn't happen. Obviously there's no real drive for guests to come here yet, but planning for the future, we have the restaurant expansion coming out soon, which is a free update, I think coming sometime this month. So it's going to be quite nice to see what that comes with, like whether or not it's just a basic vendor type thing, like where the toilets, they'll go in to the toilet and they'll just disappear for a bit and then come back out. Is that restaurant going to be the same, or is it something a little bit different? I haven't actually looked at a lot of the previews. I've not really watched any videos from other Planet Zoo creators explaining what they're all about, and I'm not really sure if we've been given a more concrete update on what they're going to be, but it will be interesting to see that. It's also going to be interesting if that means it paves the way for hotels, which we did have in Planet Coaster. So it would be quite nice if we then have these hotels and I've got buildings right here in place to be able to put a hotel in immediately, and then we've got this campground that is now a hotel that can be used by guests and they can go there themselves, which I think is really nice. And going back to what I've been talking about is I don't really see why you can't be building stuff like this in a franchise mode. It obviously, like I said, it makes growth a little bit more long term. It can dent your finances like it has done in my case, and if you don't have enough to like come back from that, it can lead you into a little bit of a financial difficulty. And I don't really think that's much of an issue though, because it is fairly easy to come back in. Like I said, if you are focused on exhibit animals from the start, you will get a nice bit of income. Like at the moment, our forest scorpions are bringing us in an absolute ton of money every birth cycle. They're all golded out now, so they've got max longevity and max fertility, which is really nice. So we're building our pagoda right now. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, and then I'll go back to talking about how we're making our income and the animals that we currently have in place in our exhibits. So I watched a Delay Designer video the other day where she told you how to build round structures using these hard clay posts. And what you do is you put them up, and that is your middle. You then build anything onto it like we're doing right now. You then duplicate that clay pillar and everything else and move it all around, and then you continue that rotation all the way around, and eventually you delete the clay pillars that you have in the middle. Mud, not clay, what am I talking about? So you rotate these all the way around and then delete that middle pillar and then put in a pillar of your choosing, and that's your nice round structure complete. It takes seconds. It's a lot quicker than doing the method that I did when I built the lemur habitat. We then sunk that down, deleted it, and then I quickly realized it is on a completely ridiculous angle. So it looked straight from where I was looking at it. No, it wasn't. It was absolutely skew with. Anyway, we sorted that out pretty quickly. And then it's just a case of making sure that I get the height right. Now, this looked a little bit low to me, so what I did was I moved that roof all the way out, doubled up on our foundation blocks, put in a nice wood floor, and then we're going to do a little trim all the way around there. And that's just going to be red plaster because it's easy, we can manipulate it very well to what we've currently got, and obviously we can change the colour. Colour palette is going to be a really big thing in this zoo. I've already talked about this briefly, but I want to try and keep those autumnal, wintry, earthy tones. So everything's going to have a little bit of a shade on it. So we're going with a dark red here because I think that's a really nice deep colour. It also adds a bit of contrast to the brown and the grey of the wood and the stone that we have here. And I think it's really important to keep that theme consistent throughout. So we're going to be playing around with this a lot more. The only time I'm probably going to be using brighter colours is on signage. So if I want something in particular to really stand out from the rest of it, that's when I'll be using something a little bit more bright and a little bit more vibrant. But other than that, this colour palette that we're playing with is starting to expand, and we are getting a little bit more of like dark greens and dark reds and dark oranges and stuff coming in. But everything has to have that particular palette because that's where it becomes effective, and that's where you get a nice lovely like series of colours coming through, and there's that nice development of the warming earthy reds and oranges and those fresh dark green colours, and it just sets all of the buildings off really nicely, and it keeps everything uniform and moving in the same direction. There's nothing worse in my opinion than having so many different types of colours overlapping, and it just becomes this weird, it's like an assault on the senses, and that's one of the things I really don't like. If you were going with this huge like indoor wow big like arcade style neon drenched zoo, great, keep that consistent though. Don't then switch to a building that's got some like dark earthy tones. Same way with here, I want something a little bit more natural and a little bit more cozy feeling. Anyway, enough of that ramble. I don't know why I got on such a high horse about that. We've put in some entrance pillars here, and that allows me to dictate the height of the build itself. It looks a lot better now, it looks a lot more natural, and as it should be, as if people would come in here and still have plenty of room without bashing their heads off the entrance when they come in. And then we put in some supporting pillars. The other thing I wanted to do was grab our foundation stones and raise them up, because I'm not actually going to have this as a covered piece. So snow is still going to get through. Just running out of money, so taking out another loan. Excuse my financial mismanagement, we're just doing it in the name of decoration. So there we go, the pagoda's just about finished. I threw that down, moved it around, and then it's just a case of putting in some supporting pillars. Now I did try and bring a path in here because I did want to throw down a few benches, but it didn't work. And what I may do at some point is use the pallets to create like a rounded seating area, see if that looks any good. But I'm quite happy with how it is, as like just a place more like an observation point where people can just come up and have a look at things, and you can really get a nice view up the nature trail. and you can also get a view down into where our new railway station is. I was going to put a fire pit in here, but the fire pits that we've got, the one fire pit we have, is way too small. So that may be something that's more of a long-term thing. If I do build another one of these, I will then try to upgrade it. And then what I'll do is delete this one and replace it with the new one that I build. Threw down a few torches because they give a really nice warming glow to the field, to the whole place anyway. And I just think it adds a little bit of a difference from standard straw yellow lighting. But it's looking really cool, and for something that didn't take me that long to build, I was pretty happy with it. And then it's just a case of putting in our foliage to finish this off and close it all in. There is one more thing I need to do, and that's put a sign up, but we will do that later on, and I will show you what I did for that as well. Just throwing down some trees, making sure they're not leaning over too much. That has happened a couple of times. I did notice, actually, when I first started building this one, there were a load of trees like floating down the bottom of the hill. They were like just not sunk into the ground at all. So it was next a case of covering up some of these path markers, because the path here looks a little bit janky and a little bit all over the place. So I built a planter using some of the shapes that were stacked on top of each other and all painted black. I then put some mulch in, and we put a Christmas tree in. Because who doesn't want it to be Christmas all year round? We're approaching Christmas time now, we're in December, why not have it all year? No, honestly, the idea of Christmas being all year really scares the hell out of me. There's actually a shop in Edinburgh where it's Christmas all year round. There's probably shops all over the world, but that's just one I've been to, and for some reason it is one of the most popular tourist destinations for people who go to Edinburgh. I've never actually been inside it, but I've seen it from the outside, and it is one of the most surreal and bizarre things I've ever seen. But yeah, I think these are just nice decorative items, and they don't look too Christmassy. It's when you start putting the presents and stuff around them and expanding all of that too much that it becomes a little bit more of a garish representation of an all year round Christmas theme. Now, I don't mind Christmas, I really like Christmas, but all year round would be way too much for me. Incidentally, talking about building the outside of this planter with these planks, when I was duplicating them, the heights of them all went a little bit strange, so it kind of had this like gradual angle increase as it went around. While I didn't like that, it did inspire me to kind of make adjustments to the height all the way around of the different planks, so it looked a bit more of a rustic structure than something that was too uniform. And that's something that I like to incorporate into this zoo in particular, because one, it gives me the freedom to make mistakes and pretend that it's all part of the rustic feel, but also because I like to imagine that this national park is way out in the sticks and there's not really anywhere to get. It's very difficult to bring in a load of resources to complete a project or whatever, so they're kind of cobbling together bits and pieces of whatever they can get their hands on. It might well be that there's like a forestry somewhere. In fact, maybe we could build one here. We could build a forestry with like a sawmill and stuff, where they have a load of saplings growing on one side and then some cut down tree. That's another idea for another episode. And again, it goes with, I did talk about it, the beavers with the sawmill. Maybe I'll do that. I've got more reason to do it now because we need stuff on site to build all of these structures. That's definitely going to happen. You can hold me to that one. It will happen. I'll start planning it. We'll get one made. Anyway, it was just now finding some little bits and pieces to create some micro scenes within the build just to finish everything off. Like here we have this little rock cluster with a bit of caribou moss coming out of it. But other than that, not really much more to do, and I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. The cabins look really nice, that lovely background of the trees there, and this wintry scene. I just think it looks really cool. Again, I said last episode I would go to the zoo and I would certainly stay in these cabins. Next up, we're building our sign. So we're going to start with some plaster, and we're just going to use a plaster panel, which we'll then give some foundation to with some stone, some Arctic wood, and then I did try messing around with the actual text pieces that we have, but they're too big. They don't fit in such a small size, so we end up replacing it with a TV screen, and I went back into Photoshop and designed a basic custom sign for this. I've done a lot of that lately. I do have a lot of experience in Photoshop. I used to work for a design company, but I find it becomes more of a job than anything, so whilst I am making them and I like to make them, I don't spend a lot of time doing that. So the signs are all pretty basic, but I do think they add that little bit more character to the zoo itself, and I think it just really finishes off a build that you really take ownership of something by doing something like custom like that. And I like that, and I like that we've got that feature. So I do plan to use it more, but I don't plan to spend too much time doing it, if that makes any sense at all. So yes, we decided to light this a little bit, but these weren't great. They don't put out a lot of light, so I'm not expecting too much from them. We'll probably get enough light from the TV screen that we put in anyway, so I can't really see these having too much of an impact, and they actually may end up being a little bit too expensive for us to keep on, because we do need to try and trim our costs, so any unnecessary lighting we need to get rid of. One of the things I am grateful for about working in this biome is we get a lot of nighttime, so it gives me a chance to really experiment with the lighting, rather than having to speed through the zoo for a little bit until I get to a night time and then putting all my lights down. It always tends to be a little bit dark here because of the biome that we're in. So I am able to experiment with lighting as I go, and I really like that about it. I do wish we had a little bit more of a thaw cycle here though, so that we could see the map without snow. But that's not too much of an issue, and I am quite enjoying this snow-drenched atmosphere that we've got here. I think I've only had one thaw in the entire 7 years that the simulation's been running, so what I've actually been doing is using the terrain tool, making the radius about 20 meters, and then that lets me see what the place looks like without any snow in place. So that's a tip if you are playing on a snow-covered map. So we did notice there was no power here, and we need power so that those windows light up. We also need to distribute power a little bit more up the hill as well, for when we eventually build up there. So what I did was I looked around, as you can see with this horrible camera work, to find an appropriate cabin for our generator. So what we're going to end up with here is one cabin that is a staff cabin and the other 4 are guest cabins. I did think about putting the generator just out here in the middle of nowhere and pathing up to it, but I don't think that it doesn't fit. It just looks like we've plopped one down, and that's never what I want to go for. I always want something to look like it fits. So we played around with this cabin here. I did manage to get the generator in place, but then it became a little bit of a terrain-based nightmare, and I couldn't actually get the path right. Everything looked a little bit weird, and there were big dips and big chunks taken out of the terrain, because obviously when we put the generator down it had flattened the terrain. So we eventually undid that work and moved to the cabin to our left, which we're about to swing around to. There we go. We put the generator in here and it fit perfectly, and all we had to do was make a few adjustments to the logs, the support beams, and then everything was fine. We threw down a couple more logs just to expand the wall right into the ground, because there was still a slight gap there. And other than that, there was nothing more to do, and we can relax in the knowledge that there's power there. I do make a few adjustments to the signs. Obviously they're all labelled cabin 1 because that's what they were called in the blueprint for it. So we changed them. We went with green for our staff sign and just called that staff building or staff cabin. And then the other 4 cabins had a red sign, and each individual cabin then got its own assigned number. The sign also directs people to the nearest member of staff, probably the staff at the cabin that is labelled the staff cabin, to check in. So I went with the idea that that staff cabin would be manned all the time, and it's not just the generator that's in there. So here we are into our showcase. Riverside cabin. Riverside? Hillside cabins. What am I talking about? That's another cabin that we're going to build. These are some lovely views here. It's just a nice cozy atmosphere with a lovely environment. Maybe I'll put in some special effects of like fallen leaves or a little bit of snow blowing and things just to really finish it off. That's a lovely viewing area. Nice view of the pagoda here and a couple of benches just outside some cabins. And we're going to do a little sweep through here, coming up over the top of the mountain, looking down over that nature trail which we'll be developing in the future, right down the hill. Here we go. You can check in at an info kiosk, so obviously that could drive them back down to where we have our information desk, or they could knock on this cabin here where a member of staff will greet them, sign them in and give them the keys to one of their 4 lovely cabins. We've got a nice bench that we managed to squeeze in right there under the window in that cabin. Sweeping round here, this one's just got a different door and some stairs. Still got the trim from the previous door in though, which I think looks really cool. And then we've moved that one. So I really hope you enjoyed this one. It's been fun to build. Nice little break from doing habitat stuff. And I will see you for the next one when we move on to developing our train station. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.